are long fans of yours. You wear many hats.
I do.
I am tempted to put on the YouTube video you have about careers, about all the things that you do.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Musician, actor, social activist. I would say educator for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely been a kind of a thing. My family, we've worked with people. My grandmother was a nurse. My mother was a clinical oncology cancer nurse. My sister is an occupational therapist, and so, I haven't actually, got my grad degree, but my master's degree. But I've worked with youth in education a lot as a paraprofessional. So, yeah, it's come from a long line of people working with humans. So, yeah.
I think that shows. If you were going to get the graduate degree, what would it be in? Because you got some serious medical degrees going on there.
Yeah, I think that if I ever got it, it would probably be in education, just because it opens doors for you, regardless. And if I was going to go that route, I would do that. I think I would do that, and probably learn a language at the same time, maybe some French or some.
I feel like you're already kicking down the doors. You don't need to open them already. You have kicked them in.
Yeah, doing a bit much. But yeah, no, that's what I would do. So yeah, but wearing a few hats here, and you kind of just answer the calling, and sometimes it gets a little hectic. But right now we're in a stage where I'm in a stage where I'm just kind of waking up in the morning, memorizing lyrics for the show, and then kind of having my coffee, and then being at peace. So.
Well, and that kind of slides into tell us about your upcoming album. You got an album coming up.
Yes.
The very best of Ricky and Jane.
Yes, the very best of Ricky and Jane. My father's name is Ricky. Well, his nickname is Ricky, but his name is Derek. And my mother's name is Jane. They met protesting the Vietnam War in New Orleans in the 70s. And they had me in 1982 and my sister in 1986, and they split. And my mother then brought me from one of the most humid cities in the country to one of the coldest cities in the country, which was Minneapolis. So that was that journey. And New Orleans is a very charactered and unique city. So it has a very, very, particular character to it. And a lot of the music that is in the new album, The Very Best of Ricky and Jane, the release show on November 11th, a lot of the music is surrounding that beginning for me, my childhood in New Orleans, and then what happens afterwards. And then on the cover of it is me as, I think, a 5 or 6 year old sitting with my grandfather. And so he's playing the trombone, and I'm playing a plastic saxophone. Something from Toys R Us. I don't know what it is, but I'm playing something. Probably didn't know how to play it, but we're playing music together. So that is the introductory to The Very Best of Ricky and Jane. So yeah.
And you play a wide range of genre.
Yeah.
It is impressive. I mean.
Yeah. I think every album has at least one rock song on it.
Yeah.
So this particular album, I don't think we can't play the song because we don't have the radio edit version, but I'll send it to you.
Awesome.
It's called Over It, and we had Justin Courtney Pierre from Motion City Soundtrack solo guitar on it and sing harmony on the chorus. So there's that.
Yes.
And then there's the one that I sent you, Ferrari Hearts and Quarter Mill Pickups. That one is one of the first mixtapes I made. It was called Baby on Bad Weather. There was a track called Baby on Bad Weather. And it was me rapping over a Chet Atkins, this little like guitar, acoustic guitar. It was an e-commerce commercial, I believe. Chet Atkins had just the music playing over a commercial, and I was like, I'm gonna rap to that. So I rapped to it, and then it just blew up. And then I was like, I'm gonna have a track every album that has me rapping over acoustic guitar. And so Ferrari Hearts and Quarter Mill Pickups is the Chet Atkins track of the album. So yeah.
Nice. Do we want to listen to that now that you've
you get the download, yeah,
now
absolutely.
that you've so nicely queued it up?
Yeah.
All right.
Get the Dropbox there.
Got it. Here we go. We're still being recorded, but people can't hear us. I always like to.
Okay.
But you can be a big square now if you want.
Yeah. There's a lot more production added to this than the usual acoustic tracks had. This is fun.
On of my favorites is your song with Lucy Michelle.
Oh yeah, favorite game.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Well, I have a list, but
Okay.
I like
So cool.
I like to hear that collab. I have a secret desire for having you and Dessa together.
Oh, that would be.
I feel like that would be a good.
Yeah.
Just saying, putting it out there.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
She does the Minnesota Orchestra every year, I believe.
Yeah, she does.
My friend was playing with her. My friend plays the cello for the Minnesota Org, so.
I'm feeling like you could make that happen. I know you could,
Give
but
it a shot, yeah. Funny story, these background voices are all me,
Are
but
they?
just pitch shifted.
I assumed you'd gotten some class you were working with.
It sounds like a
some
classroom
shouting.
of kids.
It really
Yeah,
does, yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
is it weird to sit and listen to your
A
own?
little
like
bit,
where
yeah.
like quiet. I feel like
Yeah.
On the road again to what appears no end. And that's okay, we prepared for that going in. I say now what I already told you then. As important as the road trip is who you rolling with. She knows this so very well. Formerly incarcerated to the stories we tell
I was
ourselves.
gonna say on some of the songs it sort of reminds me of like Hold Steady when it gives the little shout outs of the cities. Like
Yeah.
we're kind of in the car or on your like journey through the song. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, Mankato or Duluth, and then, you know,
Yeah.
just like oh yeah, I like that.
The whole study, are they from here? Or were they?
Craig Finn is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've listened to some of their stuff.
yeah.
Actually, they
They
have a
just
song of theirs saved on Spotify recently. Gotta go back through it, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then Husker Du is from here too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bob Mould went to school here.
What?
Bob Mould went to school here. In
Okay.
Palestine.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, we're closer to my vintage when we're talking.
Bob Mould.
Yeah.
I think I heard. Does he still lives in town? Or
No, I think he lives in California. But he's coming to town. He's playing a bunch.
Okay.
Just a single, but he plays more Husker Du songs now
Oh,
after the passing of Grant Hart than he ever did.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's always a treat for me to hear some of the old Husker Du. Yeah. I know he went here. I don't know. I can't remember if the other did for sure. Bret Hart and
I
Bret
don't
Hart.
think so. I don't know for sure.
The Replacements are from here too?
Yep.
Okay. They had a track. I gotta go back through my Minnesota rock history and comb
This
through.
is one game that I might be able to win or challenge you at least.
Our trivia.
stay.
You're gonna be right there. Yeah.
No, only Minnesota music.
It's gonna be such a peaceful place to come to as well. Like every Saturday, you just get to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sauna and zone. Well, yeah. Just get a little bit of all
Yeah.
kinds. We have just like 30 seconds. Your playful ways there.
Ferrari Hearts by Toussaint Morrison, who we are chatting with in studio.
Mm-hmm.
I love that song. Any connection to Willie Nelson is always going to be good. Just in the song itself, it is as diverse as Minnesota weather. I mean, it goes everywhere from some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the visualization of it is taking a road trip and essentially with most of the acoustic, the Chet Atkins-ish songs that are on the albums, it's usually surrounding leaving or road tripping or going somewhere. So yeah, that definitely, Willie Nelson, he had a very Law of Attraction song that it came out like a year ago, and I was just listening to it on repeat, and so that kind of worked its way into the lyrics. So yeah. Who wouldn't listen to Willie Nelson on a road trip? So.
Well, my dad is a huge country fan, and
Okay.
even to this day, I will go on road trips with. My girls are older now, but I just went on a road. Where did I just went to Chicago and back in a day with my dad, or in 3 days with my dad.
Wow.
Country music the whole time.
Wow.
So country music to me is always road trip.
Yeah, it definitely has a vibration that meets like what's actually happening, like the actual activity of it. It's like, here we are. I think I listened to Garth Brooks for the first time driving to Chicago with my friend. Yeah, first time I learned heard Call 'Em Baton Rouge. I was like, what is this song? It's amazing. My friend was, oh, it's Garth Brooks, and so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Here we go, country.
that's
So,
Even when you go to Chicago, clearly the heart of Americana and country music.
Heart of the Midwest.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, now I'm a little tempted to ask about how do you think being in Minnesota versus, New Orleans origins, how does that affect the music? What are you doing? What are you hearing here that?
Well, when you listen to Professor Longhair and Dr. John on the piano from New Orleans, they play the piano on the and. So they'll do the one and. They always hit the and. It's like the in between. Everybody's filling the spaces that aren't usually on the one. And so for me, rapping began with that. Was like rapping on the and like filling in the spaces and going off. It almost sounds like it's offbeat, but it's not. And so that's kind of where I started. But then also, a big part of it has been like Screamin' Jay Hawkins and hearing people absolutely just submit to, submit to kind of the spirit of their voice and just let it rip. Like that's been a big element of my music is just soul singing. It's just like singing to your soul's content. And sometimes it sounds like this one writer from the Minnesota Daily called it soul screaming or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. But it's just Motown, like
Yeah.
it's just, that's the way people sing, like, so that's a large part of it as well. My father gave me the Shadows of Motown soundtrack back in the day. And I remember listening to it and I was like, oh my goodness, like Bernadette. The fact that you had this band that was like, it was basically Jewish and black, and they were responsible for 90% of the number one hits throughout an entire decade was insane.
It's insane.
Like, and nobody knew about him. Like that was like, so
Yeah.
this soundtrack paid homage to him, and it was just beautiful. It was really beautiful. So I akin my singing sometimes to that as well.
Nice. When you write songs, you were talking about Ferrari Hearts, but you started me to picture and a view of. Do you have a view of? Do you write the songs like they're a play, for lack of a better word?
Yeah. I mean, some of them are like they play out like a story.
Yeah.
So what you'll see on the album, there's 2 songs, one called Jubilee, and then it goes into another song called University Ave Nights. And so those are like the last 2 tracks. Excuse me, haven't had my coffee yet. But essentially, it's like a story from front to back. Like it's University Ave Nights. My goodness, was written over 10 years ago. It had to be. So sometimes music doesn't make its way to an album until way after it's been written. But yeah, there's stories along with it. But the big thing I think that where a lot of the songs start for me is with a visual. I'm sure they do some type of Rorschach test with people, but like the idea is like, how do you perceive things? And some people perceive it as like words first or pictures. And for me, I just see pictures and then I start writing to that.
Well, when you've got a song that's 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
Does it find its time? Do you get better with age? Does the song get better with age? You know what I mean? How do you meet where you're like, now's the time for this song?
That's a great question. The way that a lot of that came about was, I can't really explain the how because it just all happened. And so I had been working with the producer, a dear friend, Dr. Wiley, for over 10 years. I mean, we met in 2001 at the Hamlin dorms.
Oh,
freshman
fantastic.
On campus. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so we made several tracks to Fruity Loops when it was called Fruity Loops. Like that was like I was rapping into a plastic AOL dial-up mic.
Right.
And so
right.
yeah, that was the time. And so I'd worked with Dr. Wiley so 20 years, and then a year ago, suddenly we fell off our path and we went separate ways, and I fell into the lap of another producer named Cecil, and Cecil Strebe essentially got me into modern mixing. So like mixing tracks like in the modern, like up to speed. Like, and so he took some of the old tracks. I was like, hey, can we do these? And he was like, I'm gonna need all the files, like just singled out from each one of these. I was like, okay. And that was it. It wasn't just like it's time for it to happen, but it found its way somehow.
Okay.
Still inexplicable to me. So there are some tracks on this album that when you Jubilee and University Have Nights, over 10 years old. I think there's another song on there that's pretty old as well. And then some of them are brand new. Like I wrote Over It. I've had Over It in my head. I was listening to Elvis. What was it? The new modern.
Lover?
No, Elvis. He did a track with the Roots.
Costello?
Elvis Costello.
Costello.
Yeah. He's got a song that I've always hummed, and I've always been like, I want to make a song like that. So I made Over It, and I've been humming that song for over 10 years, but then it kind of came to fruition less than a year ago. So things just kind of happen on their own when you go back into your iPhone's recording, voice recordings, and then start to, write stuff out. So yeah, it's kind of come about on its own, to be honest. So yeah.
How much does technology play into your music now?
Oh, hugely. So I have a director of photography, and then I have Cecil. I work with Cecil, and so director of photography. What I'll send him. It just says vision board stuff, and so I'll just send him a music video or just some type of short clip from Instagram, and then that'll be it. And then for Cecil, I'll be like audio board stuff, and I'll just send like a song. I'll be like, hey, just file that somewhere because we'll come back to it at some point. And so that technology alone is huge because you're able to make reference points to music that you wouldn't been able to make before. And then with, the advent of just recording my own voice is like priceless, so I can come back to it and be like, what the heck was I thinking? That doesn't make any sense. Which is most of the time, but a lot of times, sometimes it's like, oh wow, that's really beautiful. I'm gonna rent to that. So yeah.
It's funny because I haven't thought about it before, but I think back to the era before computers, when someone got a PhD, that meant they were smart, but also they could type.
Yeah.
You'd have to change your thesis because you had mistyped something. It would be that sort of thing. And now it's. I'm not saying one's better than the other at all, but there is an opportunity now. There's an opportunity to make mistakes.
Yeah, there really is. Yeah, I mean, there's been tracks that have been entirely edited, like after their release. Like people have removed words and been like, oh, well, you can't say that anymore. Okay, so take that out.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I mean, that's an absolute thing. As opposed to it being a record, it's out there forever, and that's just the way it's going to be. Right?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, and once it's done, it's done. Yeah. And once your studio time is done, it's done.
Oh yeah, that part. I mean, it's super expensive to get back in there. But now we recorded out of a duplex. I'm going to say a duplex. It was like 3 or 4 different houses in there. We recorded out of an apartment house less than half a mile away from here. So
okay.
Yeah, it was just in a room. So I mean, the studio time is never over, right?
Right. So. Well, that's it. And it gives opportunity to so many more people, but it also it means a lot more people can do the work. So it must be hard to get the attention of
Yeah. I mean, and that's the big thing. Somebody posted about there are X million songs released a year on Spotify. How is yours going to stand out? And I'm thinking like when I was touring with The Blend, which I have our hoodie on. Yeah. We toured for 7 years and made T-shirts. Never made a hoodie until 3 years ago. Go figure. But when I was touring with The Blend, it wasn't even about amassing people to the music or even making money. It was just getting it out. It was just like all I ever wanted to do was burn CDs and then hand them out to people, and that's all we ever did. And so I would burn the CD, spray paint it, get a stencil, spray paint the B over it, and get it out. So yeah, a lot more people can do it.
Yeah. I
think the reasoning behind it or the story that's leading up to you expressing that music is really, I think, the important part. And so a lot of people can do it, but also it's cool because a lot of people have access to it now and they can tell their story. So and you get to hear a lot more new music. What was that one stat? People stop listening to new music after 33 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's crazy.
Heather was like, "Don't ever say that again." Well, so that was it. That was, I'm assuming, done from a study, and Spotify put it out, and they're like, "Hey, get to know some more new music. Come to Spotify. We'll get money for ads." But which is how they run their business. But yeah, I think with everybody being able to make music, now comes the world where we get to introduce ourselves to more new music. It's more accessible than ever. So that's the cool part.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember back in the day, you'd buy an album and you might like one song, and then you'd listen to it 42 times in the 2 hours since you purchased it, and then you never see that album again. So being able to sample, and I understand. I should buy albums. I should, because that is how I keep the economy of the business going along.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it is nice when you can. Yeah. Hear a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this.
There was also a trick that people would do if there was a popular song, somebody else would like semi-cover it, or a record label would have somebody semi-cover it. So when you bought the cassette, it wasn't actually the song. It was just somebody else singing it. I remember that happened like once or twice at Sam Goody back in the day, and I was like, oh man. Yeah, it's a bummer because music costs so much money. It's like $5 for a single. You only had $5. I mean,
exactly,
it was wild. Yeah. And can you the craziest part was like people were like when people stole from a store of music. That's probably one of the biggest accolades you could receive as a musician. Somebody wanted to steal my music from the store. Yeah. But getting back to what you were saying about albums, this from beginning to end for me one of the endeavors was to make it an album. I mean, that's all I've ever done is made, a project of music is an album for me. It's never really like, yes, there's going to be a handful of singles in here and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. So there's a beginning and end.
Well, and I know you and I, Heather and I have talked about, there was a huge push, especially during the COVID, to all of a sudden hear albums again. Yeah. Because people had time to do it. An album like a Quadrophenia, where it's so, not that I wouldn't listen to one up there, but it's a different experience.
100%, yeah. So I definitely I don't think Cecil necessarily understood the big picture of it, which it wasn't incumbent upon him too. But at the end of it, actually he kind of did. He at the end, because Over It was supposed to be the last track on the album. And then he was like, I really think you should have Jubilee and University Have Nights be the last two tracks. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So we had a bigger picture, like a big perspective, like we're trying to see the entire frame of the project. So it definitely has a story and like arc to it. So
it begs the question, will you tell us what the story and the arc is? Or do you have to hear it? I mean, is it a musical connection, or is there a thematic?
No. I think the arc of it really is, for me, because it starts off with a track called All Saints, and my name in French is, obviously my name is Toussaint, but in English it means All Saints, all the saints. And so, and so that track is just kind of like, this is my name, and there's an insane amount of history to it and story to it, and there's just a lot involved with the name Toussaint. And so that it goes into that, but then from there, it goes into kind of storytelling about my relationship with my mother, my relationship with my father. There's a track in there called For Carol, I believe. Before that, there was a track, the last album I put out, there's a track called Carol. So I've done several songs that are just been directed and messaged to my grandmother, Carol, and it talks about those relationships and mentions them, and how they've shaped me and how they shape us. In general, there's the prevailing theory that we are the very best of our parents, whether we like it or not. Whether we talk to them or not, whether they're, regardless of what relationship we have, we are the very best of them. And so that's kind of what it is. It's like, I am my mother and my father, and this is what I'm bringing to the table, or the choices that I'm making in my life. And what do I get from my grandmother? What do I get from my grandfather? And so it's really touching on the story of my relationships with my parents, and then me going into being my own autonomous, my own human being with autonomy and agency. So yeah.
It's a lot of introspection going on there to take a look at. I mean, it really is. I mean, and it's funny because I see my parents all the time.
Yeah.
But I do that more naturally looking at my kids.
Mm.
And you see the bits of you that are your kids more than I see the bits of, although I have a habit that's a visual habit. So, and someone's like, oh yeah, your grandma used to always do that. She would cover her mouth when she laughed because she didn't have all of her teeth. Someone's like, I don't know why you do that. I'm like, I thought everybody did. Those things that you just, because it's harder to see yourself.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that must have been an interesting journey.
Yeah.
Something different, as we might say in Minnesota. I mean, a good time and a bad time to kind of look at what you carry from your...
100%, yeah. And it's also, I mean, I was in Detroit visiting my cousins once, and I did like a thing, like just a gesture. It was nonverbal, and everybody like paused in the room. I was like, "What just happened?" They're like, "Oh, your dad does that all the time." I was like, How would I? I mean, I knew the man from 0 to 4. I go and visit him now frequently in New Orleans, but I mean, there's no way I would have known how to do that, So like, yeah, we do pick that up, and we are, pieces of our parents, and how do we come to terms with that and bring that forward as in our own authentic self and our own higher self as well. And then there's, I think the whole idea of being a black kid growing up with a white mom who's blonde and blue-eyed, and in the 80s and 90s when body shaming was very prevalent, racism was very overt, it was a very, me being out with my mom and sister was just like not a thing. Like there was just stares all the time. There was the song Over It is about, my mom being, harassed at the McDonald's in Richfield. I'll never forget it. But yeah. And like as a kid, you're like, man, I really want to, do something about this, but can't really. So, but yeah, so there's stories in there, and I think I'll probably put out a YouTube series explaining each track and what it is, because we have already kind of started that. It's called About That Track, and so it's on Urban Home Companion YouTube. So there'll probably be a series explaining that later on. But yeah.
I want to know what the hell fuels you up, just because you are so creative and you're everywhere and helpful to so many. What gives you that energy to be able to show up for yourself and others?
So that's okay. So that's a two-part question, because one is showing up for others, one is showing up for yourself. And I learned the hard way, continually showing up for community, you're not of much use to people if you're not of much use to yourself. And so self-care has been huge for me, getting a proper amount of sleep, but then also not beating yourself up if you got sleep. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why'd I should have gotten up earlier. I could have gotten that done. I should have released that video. And it's like, hold on. You've done a lot. And we've all, in capacity, we've done enough. We're always doing enough. Can we do more? Possibly. Can we do less? Possibly. And it's up to us to mitigate that and be efficient with it. For me, what keeps me going is the story behind what's actually happening. So on the cover, we'll see, this headline or that story from Care 11 or something like that. And the thing is that there's always a story behind that. There's a story behind that story. And so when you get to the humanity of issues, and kind of like what drives me is really the humanity of it, is you then have a point of connection with that person. And so like this happened all the time with comic books. I worked at West 7th Community Center for a long time. And the kids would have to do a reading hour. And I'd be like, I think we should go to the library. They have a library in the community center. But also in the library is a huge comic book section. I'm talking huge. And they had a lot of comic books that surrounded, there's a character named Apocalypse. There's a character named Dr. Doom. And so like, they're like, here's the issue of that. And I'm like, well, these guys are bad guys. But they have a whole story. There's a reason why they are the way they are. There's a story behind why they do that. Like the same reason that you cover your mouth sometimes is the same reason why people may have like, on a macro level, like a traumatized reaction. So, and this happens from me working with kids in resource rooms and in situations where me as a paraprofessional, and this isn't my wording, but the mission is to reintegrate the student back into their homeroom. And a lot of times their homeroom isn't like the best place for them to be. It's not the place that they learn. So it's the story behind what makes people tick and how they got to the place that they are. And so when you can shed light on that for other people, one, they can begin to understand what's happening at a deeper level, and two, they can begin to understand themselves better and give themselves some grace, for what's going on in their life. And I think that's just a huge first step for people to take whenever approaching a story that is extremely vitriolic, volatile, traumatizing. It's just, let's get to the story of how folks got here in the first place and then move from there. So yeah, what gets me going is, like I said earlier, is the humanity of it. So, yeah.
I think giving agency to kids don't get a lot of agency in their world.
No.
They don't. And sometimes the homeroom isn't the right place for them.
No.
Some of the their safe places are not safe places.
Yeah.
They can't be defined by other people, but that's magic work.
Yeah, my sister is an occupational therapist. I saw one of the rooms that she worked in. It was they had a yoga ball like attached to the ceiling that swung back and forth. They had, all type of sensory stuff, and I'm like, where was this?
Yeah, right.
I was like, my goodness. Right. I was like, that is a space that certain minds learn.
Yeah.
A lined up, a classroom with desks lined up is some place where other kids learn. And then I know some teachers where they dim the lights and they just got like circle tables and everybody sits at a table with a group, and that's where they learn. Yeah. So everybody has a different way of going about it.
It's very different.
Yeah.
I'm shifting gears mostly because I'm looking at what time it is.
Yeah, we gotta.
What I'm going to say is maybe you could tell us about the upcoming show, and then we'll think about what song you want us to play after that. But
yes.
Tell us
Okay, so the upcoming show is at the Green Room, 8 p.m. on November 11th. And so between 8 and 9 is when the doors and the performers start. So the performances start at 9, I believe. But 8, we're going to debut a music video for... And actually, I can send this one to you right now. Okay. We're going to debut a music video for the song Hop Into the Ride. And that song is really, really, really... It started at started like a cellular level. I was writing on a napkin at 331 Club. And essentially, it came about. But what we're doing on the 11th is... We're just playing a release show, and it's playing all the music from the new album. Taylor Hamilton's going to be in the keys. Patrick Moses is playing drums. Alex Bennett will be on bass, who played in the blend with me. And I'm sending this to you right now.
Okay, to play.
Yeah.
Now? Okay.
And the person that's featured on the track, and I can't forget Edward Foley, who's playing. Just emailed it to you. Edward Foley, who's going to be playing guitar, who was the first guitarist I ever played with on the blend. He was in the teen band contest in 2001 on Lake Street that we won. And we were supposed to play with the DJ, but his records melted underneath the sun. Dude, they were wavy. It was crazy. It was that hot. That happens. Yeah.
Oh, that happened to all my parents' albums.
Oh no.
We used to move a lot. Okay. And then one time moved all the albums near the heater.
Oh my goodness.
Mensa. Yes. Or Mensa over at our house.
So November 11th, Saturday, November 11th, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. See the premiered music video. 9 p.m. Damascus is playing, which is just a riotous group of rappers. Imagine just 5 people from the University of Minnesota just getting up and rapping. It's just going to be intense. And then Lazy Scorsese is going to be there as well. And nice. It's going to be such a darn good show. I can't wait. And it's just to be able to play with some of your best friends is the coolest thing too. It's so much fun. So yeah, awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Well, we are going to play this out, but Toussaint, thank you so much for your time and your energy, and
thank you so much for having me. We are looking forward to
the show. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, can't wait to see y'all there. All right, hop into the ride. All right.
All right, I'm gonna. Baby, hop into the ride.